Hi, Michelle Houghton here for Copic in the Craft Room. I have two shorter videos today, and I'm sticking them together because they have a similar theme and definitely similar artwork. These are both pieces from Ann Corbiere Scott, which you have seen me color on before. So we have one new digital sheet. This one is full of these big, beautiful roses. It's called Carolyn. And one of the things that's unique about this particular color sheet, so normally Anne has a slim line and kind of a standard A2 card front and then kind of the individual fussy cut piece. Notice though that right in between the slim line and the A2, there's roses and leaves and things that overlap between the two. So technically you could turn this and you could get a slim line this side or this side, or you could make a wider 5x7 card, I believe, out of this big piece over here, or do something larger like a background, a bigger framed piece. So this one in particular gives you a whole lot of different options. This again comes in that 8.5 standard. Put it to 100%, print it on your printer, ready to go, color. Go color. And it does come with a couple little sentiments down at the bottom, so that's one of them. The second half of the video is going to be using her newest stamp from Unity. Anne also works with a stamp company that produces her images, and this is their newest one, and it is releasing this week. So this is kind of a little homage to both of those because they're both coming out, and I didn't necessarily want to give you two separate videos, but I thought I'd show you at least kind of what I am doing with each one of those. I'm going to use a series of reds on this guy. Now remember, on reds they tend to have a little bit of a life on their own, so some little tips in dealing with reds. I am going to color dark to light. That is my preference when dealing with reds. And I'll show you a couple different ways to do it though. So I am going to start from dark to light on this first one. And then I will show you, let's do this. We'll do 3 sections and then I'll do the rest of the rows working light to dark because I know some of you are more comfortable doing that. So R59 is my first, and it's going to go in those deepest sections. Anne has given us some hints this time where she wants those to happen. And we want to give those petals, so we're looking at the top, and so these flowers are curving down and away from us, and this is right at the center of those rows where the petals are kind of overlapping as they come up and around. So I know I'm going to have some little darker spots where it folds under the petal next to it, and at these corners. Flowers are tricky in that now from this view we have some dimension, but a lot of times they're open and kind of facing us. That adds that challenge of where do we add shape, how do we add it so that we can see that dimension when they're kind of flat-faced critters. They're not super dimensional, especially when they're open and kind of just facing us. Then I'm going to run through a series of R8s. This is an R85. This is the biggest jump I'm making. So especially working dark to light, this is going to be pretty much my hardest shift. So I'm going to have to work that edge pretty good. Now, a couple things. If you do one little section at a time, that ink will stay wet and you will have an easier time getting these to blend together. And so that is one advantage of doing smaller sections at once. You could also just do kind of these first two kind of through one by one and then come back and do some broader areas, because the next color blends will be easier color blends. Having worked with the R8s before, that is the case. So let's get those. The other thing to remember with flowers in particular is we do see some vein work. They don't necessarily need to be smooth. Now I'm going in a direction that isn't necessarily what you'd see on a flower with vein work, but they might end up a little painterly, and that is okay. R83 is going to be next, and that just comes in a little further. The last one I'm going to end with here is R81, but hopefully you can see this R83 and R85 just kind of melt together. It really takes very little to no work on my part. The advantage here is when I get into these little blends, and this is the R81, I'm not putting a lot of ink on the paper, and especially with reds, that's one of the biggest tricks, is the less ink you can lay down, the less chance I have of those colors bleeding outside of those image lines, which is one of the biggest issues people have with them. So there we go. So we've got a good shape going there. What I'm going to do on the inner portion is I will show you, if you want to work light to dark, kind of some tips to still keep that contained a little bit more. So if I'm going to go in reverse, here's some keys. When I start with my lightest, that R81, I'm going to start near the center, and I'm not going to hit the edges. I'm also going to refill this marker before I put it away, because it is not flowing the way it should. So I've got all of these little areas, and as you get closer, you may or may not have that lightest color. So you can kind of determine, do I want some of that light, but maybe these tiny areas, we won't even see it. It's up to you. But I'm leaving white on all the edges. Very, very purposeful. I've got 4 reds to get through. So there was one. R83 is next. I'm going to flick that in onto my light, and then I am going to come to that inner edge, because I'm going to assume that top edge might stay a little bit lighter. So that might get filled in, but there's still some white showing as we come in to these inner ones. I know those are going to be darker. There's just not as much showing. They're tighter. And so my assumption is those are going to get considerably darker. One last one here. Now remember, we still have to go in reverse. So there's more ink to come. So I want to be cautious about how much I'm laying down at this stage, especially if I'm going to go back through. So I'm going to hit those outer edges, and at this point I'm going to lose my white. If anything, right in that bottom corner, you could argue you might keep some of that lighter, or you could keep that white, because you know that's going to get that darkest color kind of in these deep outer corners on each section. All right, come closing into the center. And then my darkest is that R59. And where are these petals going to be the darkest? Outer, where it's tucked into that outer layer. Tucked in right along that scoop. There we go. Now you could even do like a dark, very dark blue violet, or maybe better yet, a V99 if you wanted to push those darkest corners even further. Now, the advantage of the dark to light is you were done. The disadvantage of the light to dark is now we've got to go back and do at least some smoothing. Again, the hardest one is going to be this first jump from the R59 to the R85. But I don't have a ton of ink on that edge because the only two colors that went all the way out there are the R85 and the R59. So these are going to be not too bad. I don't have so much ink that it's necessarily going to bleed outside my lines. This is one of those sketches and images that if it did bleed a little further, I'm kind of okay. The way Ann does her artwork is very sketchy, doodly, in that there are repetitive lines, and so it works when I bump outside a little bit. She's almost given that little bit of grace in that if I'm not perfectly in the lines, it looks like it goes with the image. And then we'll step down, and these will melt easier as we go. R85 to R83 is what I'm doing now. And again, think about kind of where you know you want that highlight to happen. Where is that going to be the lightest? Where it catches the light, kind of at the tips of the petals, it might. That inner. And as I'm working my way toward that light, I'm noticing some spots that didn't get blended super well, but I am okay with a painterly look. So you can kind of decide. Go ahead and pull out that artistic license and decide, do I want this more blended? Am I happy with kind of a more painterly look where I can see some of those layers or see some of my strokes? And you get to make some of those decisions. Okay, so I'm pretty content with that. Again, if you wanted, you could do a couple things. You can work more to get that more smoothly blended, or you can even come back in and push some of these corners back. And the one I was recommending is actually a V99. The beauty of this one is it wouldn't take much to blend this in. It actually kind of melts in with other colors pretty well. So it works to kind of tuck corners in. There we go. Just enough. I'm all about punching corners in. If you've taken class from me, I talk about giving images one last poke to kind of tuck those corners in and push them under the other pieces. There we go. So again, up to you how far you want to take those. I'm pretty content with this. I'm gonna try to smooth this out just a little bit more in here. But I could fiddle with it for a while. So there is one of Ann's new images. And again, you could absolutely use any color combo you wanted on this. If I have time, I will try to get this all the way colored up so you can see kind of that full card, what that might look like, and give you guys a sense of that. So here's one, and then we'll scoot over and try this other one that's coming out as an actual hands-on stamp from Unity. All right, and this one, I'm doing a different series. I'm working with some violets and some blue violets, violets and blue violets, but also some RVs, which you guys don't see me do very often. So I've got an RV 11, and I've got an RV 3.2 and 3.4 that I'm working with. So these are tiny little flowers. So I'm going to make the decision of kind of how I want to work here. We've got a bunch of these little kind of closed buds, and I'm going to make all of those my violets. And then these flowers that are open, I'm going to work with my RVs. Now, the other thing I'm going to tell you about this is I am absolutely not going to go back and blend all of this. I am going to leave it very painterly. So I'm starting, and I'm going to try 2 or 3 flowers. We'll see if that works. And if I like the look of it, we're going to leave it at that. But I might try 2 or 3 also going from dark to light. So I'm starting with the lightest, going from the center out, pretty much almost completely coating those little petals. Gets pretty light at those edges though, and I'm purposefully doing that. RV 3.2 right in that center, comes out. These almost kind of stay within that like inner petal. And then RV, let's get you guys closer. RV 3.4 right at the center. And I think I can do it just like that. I don't need that. I know that I need to do anything else with those little guys. So let's do another little smattering of those. RV11. Nice broad. It only takes like literally 1 or 2 strokes per petal. You might even get to a point if you turn your paper, you might be able to do like a single flick, kind of wide flick out on each petal. Dun, 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 dun. Not really trying to get the center. I'm trying to avoid it if I can, but seem to be bumping it a little. All right. So let's do this group, kind of like my other image. We're not going to complete this on the video. I just want to give you guys an idea of some fun color combos and an easy way to attack a pretty detailed big image like this. It doesn't always have to be super complicated. You can make it more complicated. You can always make it more complicated. And sometimes I'm in the mood for that. I will be the first to admit that sometimes it's fun to say, okay, I am going to go a little crazy. I'm going to add all sorts of detail and fun stuff on an image. And it's usually an image that I want to do something specific with. I have a plan in mind. And so I'm going for a larger art piece, or I have a specific person in mind to gift it to, or occasion. And then I'll spend a little more time. And yet, sometimes you just don't need to either. So, fun to have both ideas in the back of your head of what you can do with some of these. Okay, so got a group of flowers. I am going to, I think, so I've got a V01. And my guess is these are just buds of those flowers. So chances are they wouldn't necessarily be a lavender, but sometimes when you look at little flowers, we have variations from their buds until when they open. So we're going to say this is one of those. I'm calling it. All right, got a few of them. Again, I'm just playing around, so we'll see how this looks if we need to make adjustments. This is a V02. So this is BV02. So this is going to change the look because now we've added blue in the mix a little bit. So I'm going to go kind of along some of these little seams where it's kind of folded in, right? little bud that's all closed up tight. So right along those little seams. That probably should have been a leaf, but it's going to be a bud, giving it a new life. Okay. I feel like there was another one inside, but I have lost it. There it is. Got it. Okay. Then the last one I'm debating. I may rather leave it there because this one is going to be dark. I'm thinking I am going to leave it lighter. I'm liking that lighter look, so I'm going to back out a little bit on this one if I can. Now, so only the two colors, the V01 and BV02. Those are the two that I'm going to use on there. And then this is one of those that I could consider doing something like, see, I'm going to do this. I did all this color practicing yesterday, playing around with what I wanted to do. With some of this. Actually, what about I'm debating. I know this isn't necessary, but sometimes I do like when it's a cluster like this to create kind of a dark pop the background down, but I'm wondering if there's something that would be brighter but still kind of push that back. Don't hate I'm backing up here, going back to the one, I think it was this. No, I want that one. What was that one? Is it this? Yes. Okay. This is a B39, and this one, again, small amount. And I would do this at the very end. I would not normally do this now. Once I have this all colored in, all those little flowers and the leaves, I might come in with a darker, kind of intense color. I like the contrast of that, and I appreciate that's not reality. I don't know where you'd ever see this in nature. You wouldn't see it in nature, and it would take a very specific kind of lighting situation, studio lighting situation, to even get there, and I'm not sure if you would, but I like the look of it, and so I will use the technique on occasion, kind of pushing that background way back. I'll have to kind of watch as I go around some of these little stems. If I lose those, that's not going to be a good fit. So maybe as I get to that exterior of the image, I'm going to have to lighten that up a bit. And then I think the only other things is we do have those little centers. Ugh, this is always a challenge for me. I don't really want it. I think this is going to work though. I don't really want it yellow. That's still too bright. Which one was that? This is a YR00, so kind of a neutral yellow red. It's very peachy. I don't really want a bright, vivid yellow center, so to me this is a good alternative. I like that. Then we do have we have 2 big leaves, and I'll do those in a group of YGs, I think. But the more I look at this, all of these little guys I think are probably buds. So all of those are going to get the bud treatment. And then I'll do some yellow greens. Anyway, fun, easy way to feature this new image from Ann Corbiere Scott and Unity. I think it's Unity Company. I'll make sure to print it on the video so you guys can see. New stamp, new digital. You can check both of those out, and I'll see. I don't know if I'll have the finished colored images at the end here, but I'm hoping I can have those for you guys so you can see kind of the full finished result of these. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please make sure to stop by my blog at scrapweaver.com and check out my classes that are online class and hopefully soon to be classes, as well as some possible digital art coming soon as well. Thank you so much for stopping by. Have a happy, colorful day.